The woman in the red bikini didn't blush. She didn't flinch. She crossed her arms, squared her jaw, and said it like a verdict. "My eyes are up here." And the man, navy-built, broad-shouldered, carrying 3 years of grief behind eyes that had already seen too much, didn't stumble, didn't apologize. He looked at her for exactly 1 second, then said something so quiet and so precise it stopped her cold. She didn't have a single word left. But what neither of them understood yet was that the real danger on that beach wasn't each other. It was already coming. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story has traveled. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. You will not want to miss what comes next. Ethan Cole had not packed light. That was the first thing Lily noticed when her father opened the trunk of the truck and just stood there, staring at 4 duffel bags, a toolbox he definitely did not need, and a cardboard box of books he would probably never open. "Dad." Lily put one hand on her hip. She was 9 years old and already had the patience of someone twice that age. "We're here for a week." "I know. You packed like we're moving." He didn't argue. He grabbed the 2 heaviest bags, one in each hand, and started walking toward the house without another word. That was Ethan. He didn't explain himself much anymore. He just moved. He acted. He fixed things. It was the only language he'd had left after Sarah died, and 3 years later, it was still the only one that felt safe. The beach house sat at the end of a gravel road separated from its neighbors by a stretch of seagrass and low dunes. Ethan had bought it 2 years ago on an impulse, or what passed for an impulse, in a man who calculated every decision like a mission brief. He'd told himself it was an investment, something for Lily, a place they could come to someday when things felt better. Things didn't feel better, but he'd run out of reasons to keep waiting. Lily ran ahead of him up the porch steps and pressed her face against the front window. "Can we go to the beach first?" "Bags first." "Dad." "Bags, then beach." She groaned loudly enough to be heard 2 houses down, which was the point, and he almost smiled. Almost. He caught himself before it fully formed the way he always did. Not out of guilt exactly, but out of habit. Smiling fully felt like something that required permission he hadn't been given yet. Inside the house smelled like cedar and salt air, and something faintly floral that he didn't recognize and couldn't name. He set the bags down in the main room and stood very still for a moment. There was a photograph on the wall. A generic one, a lighthouse waves, nothing personal. But the frame was the same kind Sarah used to buy. Dark wood. Simple. She said expensive frames were for people who didn't trust their art to speak for itself. He turned away from it and carried the bags to the bedrooms. Lily was on the beach 20 minutes later. Ethan was 3 steps behind her, still in jeans, carrying his boots in one hand because she'd pulled him out the door before he'd had time to change. "You're going to burn," she said, looking up at him critically. "I'm fine." Sarah always said. She stopped, pressed her lips together, looked back at the water. The name landed in his chest the way it always did. Not like a punch, more like a hand reaching in and squeezing, slow and deliberate, and completely unavoidable. He breathed through it. He'd gotten good at that. The breathing. "Your mom was right," he said, keeping his voice level. "I should have put sunscreen on." Lily nodded, satisfied that she'd made her point without making a scene. She had learned very carefully how to talk about her mother without breaking her father. It was a skill no 9-year-old should have had to develop. Ethan knew that. He carried that knowledge too. He dropped his boots in the sand and sat down, elbows on his knees, watching Lily race toward the water like she had somewhere urgent to be. The ocean was flat and bright and indifferent. He'd always liked that about the ocean. It didn't ask anything of you. It just kept moving. He'd been sitting there maybe 10 minutes when he first noticed the woman to his left. She was maybe 40 yards down the shoreline, standing at the edge of the water, with her arms loose at her sides, looking out at nothing. Red bikini. Dark hair pulled up in a knot. Something in the way she was standing, not relaxed, not tense exactly, but like someone who had chosen very carefully how much space to take up in the world, and had chosen as little as possible. He wasn't staring. He was aware. There was a difference one he'd learned early in the Navy when situational awareness was survival. You noticed things. You cataloged them. It didn't mean anything beyond that. Then Lily screamed. Not a playful scream. The sharp, sudden kind. the kind that moved Ethan from sitting to standing in under a second, his boots still in the sand behind him, his eyes already locked on his daughter. She'd tripped at the water's edge, a shell, a rock, something in the sand, and gone down hard on her knee. He was already moving toward her when he saw the woman in the red bikini break into a run. She reached Lily first. She was closer. By the time Ethan got there, the woman was already crouched beside Lily, one hand gentle on her shoulder, the other lifting Lily's chin with a steadiness that didn't look practiced. It looked instinctive. Hey, look at me. What's your name? Lily? Her voice was wobbly, her lower lip shaking. A thin line of blood was threading down her shin. Okay, Lily, that was a nasty fall, but you're still here, aren't you? Still got both legs. The woman's voice was even, calm, like talking someone down from a ledge. Lily let out a wet, hiccuping laugh despite herself. Yeah, then we're okay, just a scrape. The ocean's done worse to me and I'm still standing. She reached into a small bag at her hip, the kind of bag that said she was organized in ways that were now automatic, and pulled out a folded square of gauze. Ethan arrived beside them. He looked at Lily. First assessed the injury quickly. Surface wound, no depth. No need for anything beyond cleaning, then looked at the woman. She was already focused entirely on Lily. She hadn't glanced at him yet. Thank you, he said. She looked up then, and something shifted in her expression. Not hostility, not warmth. More like a door closing very quietly. She stood, handed the gauze to Lily, and took one step back. She's fine, the woman said. Her voice had cooled by exactly 1 degree. Not rude, just closed. I can see that. He watched her face. I'm Ethan. She didn't offer her name. She held his gaze for a moment, and he realized she was waiting for something. An apology. An excuse. The usual script from men who got caught looking. He hadn't been looking, but she'd made an assumption, and he understood why she'd made it, and he didn't resent her for it. I wasn't, he started. Eyes are up here, she said. Flat, clear, not aggressive, just done. He paused. Let that sit for a moment. Then he said, I know, I was watching my daughter. She blinked. But even if I hadn't been. He kept his voice even, unhurried. Not defensive, not apologetic, just honest. You put that suit on this morning for yourself, not for anyone else. First time in a while, isn't it? The silence that followed was not comfortable. It was the kind that has weight. Her chin lifted, her eyes narrowed just slightly, not in anger, but in the way people look at something unexpected, trying to figure out what it is, where it came from, whether it's safe. You don't know anything about me, she said. No, he agreed. I don't. Another pause. I'm Maya, she said. It came out like she surprised herself. Ethan, he said again. And then he looked down at Lily, who was examining the gauze pressed against her shin with intense scientific interest. And you've already met Lily. Hi, Lily said without looking up. Maya looked at the girl for a moment, and something crossed her face, complicated and fast, and gone, before Ethan could name it. Loss, maybe. Or the anticipation of loss, which is worse. She's brave, Maya said quietly. She gets it from her mother, Ethan said. He hadn't meant to say it. It came out before the edit, the way those things did sometimes. He felt the familiar tightening in his chest and pushed it back down with the practiced ease of a man who'd had 3 years of practice. Maya looked at him then. Really looked. Not at the width of his shoulders or the steadiness of his voice. At his eyes. At the thing he was holding very carefully behind them. She recognized it. She looked away first. I'm 2 houses down, she said. If you need anything. She said it the way people say things they don't fully intend out of reflex muscle memory from before they learn to keep their distance. Thanks, Ethan said. She nodded once and walked away. He watched her go, not the way she'd assumed he was watching, but the way you watch someone retreating from something and wonder if they'll make it. Lily tugged his arm. Is that lady our neighbor? Seems like it. She was nice. Yeah, he said. She was. Dao. That night, Ethan sat on the back porch with a glass of water and no lights on. Lily was asleep inside one arm, thrown over her face the way she'd slept since she was a baby. He could hear the ocean. He couldn't see it. He thought about what he'd said. She gets it from her mother. He never said that. Not out loud, not to strangers. He'd spent 3 years very carefully keeping Sarah inside the house of himself, present in private, invisible in public. Not because he was ashamed of her, because every time her name was in the air, he had to stand there and watch people's faces do the thing they did. The sad smile, the careful pause, the "I'm so sorry" that was sincere and completely inadequate, and he'd received 10,000 times. He was tired of receiving it, but today it had come out. To a woman he'd known for 6 minutes, standing on a beach in a moment he hadn't planned. He didn't know what to make of that. He thought about the look on Maya's face when he'd said it. Not the sad smile, not the careful pause, just recognition. Like she'd looked at a word in a language she thought she was the only one who spoke. He poured the rest of his water into the sand beside the porch and went inside. The next morning he was up before Lily, which was always. He ran 4 miles along the shoreline, the same discipline he'd carried since boot camp, the same pre-dawn quiet, the same ritual of moving his body hard enough to outrun whatever was waiting inside his head. He was on the return when he saw Maya again. She was standing at the water's edge in running shorts and a faded gray shirt shoes-off feet in the shallow break. She wasn't running. She wasn't doing anything. She was just standing there again in that same careful stillness, like she'd found the exact amount of space the world would allow her and was staying inside it. He slowed. She heard him and turned. Her guard went up, automatically. He watched it happen, the slight squaring of her shoulders, the careful rearrangement of her expression into something neutral. "Morning," he said. "You run?" she asked. "Every day." "Habit or punishment?" He almost laughed. "Depends on the day." She almost smiled. "Yeah, I know that one." He stopped running and stood beside her. Not close. The appropriate distance of strangers who have had one honest conversation and are not yet sure what to do with it. "How's Lily?" she asked. "Already forgotten about the knee. Wants to get back in the water." "Good." A pause. "Kids are better at that." "At what?" "Getting back in." She looked out at the water. After something knocks them down, he looked at her profile, the set of her jaw, the way she was watching the waves like they owed her something. "When did you stop?" he asked. She turned. "Stop what?" "Getting back in." The silence stretched long enough that he thought he'd overstepped. He was about to say forget it when she spoke. 3 years ago, she said. Her voice was perfectly steady and completely hollow. "Give or take." He nodded once. "You?" she asked. 3 years, he said. "Give or take." She looked at him. He looked at her. The ocean kept moving, indifferent and honest and relentless. "What happened?" she said. It wasn't small talk. It was the kind of question people only ask when they already know the shape of the answer, because they're carrying the same one. "My wife died," he said. Flat, clean, no performance. Maya was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said, not unkindly. "You didn't do anything." She looked down at her feet in the sand. "Mine didn't die. He just..." She pressed her lips together. "He decided I wasn't worth what he'd promised, a long time before he actually left." Ethan said nothing. He waited. "And he took things when he went," she added, "that I can't..." She stopped. "I have a son, Lucas. He's 7. And Derek he has some claim over him, still legally. And every time I have to stand in a room with that man..." She exhaled hard through her nose. "I don't know why I'm telling you this." "Because I asked," Ethan said simply. "And because you're tired of not telling anyone." She looked at him sharply, like he'd reached through something he wasn't supposed to be able to reach through. "I don't know you," she said. "I know. I don't trust easily. I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" He thought about it. He was a man who thought before he spoke, not out of caution, but out of respect. For the person he was talking to, for the words themselves. "Nothing," he said finally. "I'm not asking anything. I'm just here, on the same beach, for the same week. That's it." She studied him. He held the look without flinching, without performing anything, without trying to be anything more or less than what he was, a man with his own damage standing in the early morning light, making no promises. "Okay," she said. The word was careful and small and meant more than it sounded. He nodded. "Okay." He started running again. She watched him go, her arms crossed loosely over her chest, her feet still in the shallow break of the water. She didn't turn back toward her house right away. That was something. Lily was awake when he got back, sitting cross-legged on the kitchen counter, eating cereal directly from the box, with the focused dedication of a person who had decided spoons were optional. "Dad," she said without looking up, "I want to go find the neighbor lady again. Her name is Maya." "Maya." Lily tested the name. "Can we bring her something like a snack?" "You're eating the snacks." "Not all of them." She held up the box. It was about a quarter full. "We're not bringing a neighbor the remainder of your cereal, Lily." "What about the oranges? We have like 10 oranges." He stopped. He thought about Maya standing alone at the water's edge at 7 in the morning, talking to the ocean, or maybe just standing still enough that the ocean was the only thing she had to pretend to listen to. "We'll see," he said. Lily took that as a yes and went to find her shoes. He stood in the kitchen for a moment, one hand braced against the counter, looking at nothing. 3 years. He had told himself 100 different stories about the next chapter of his life, and none of them had started this way, with an accidental conversation on a beach, and a woman who called him out in the wrong direction, and then couldn't quite bring herself to walk away. He'd spent 3 years keeping his head down, his eyes forward, his heart exactly where it was safe, which was closed. He was not the kind of man who fell into things. He was not the kind of man who let himself get pulled off course by something as unpredictable as another person. But he was also a man who knew very precisely what it looked like when someone was drowning quietly. He recognized it because he'd been doing it himself. He grabbed 2 oranges from the counter. "Shoes," he called to Lily. "Let's go." Maya had not planned on company. She'd been sitting on her porch with a mug of coffee going cold in her hands, when she heard the crunch of footsteps on the gravel path between the houses, light ones and heavy ones, and looked up to find a 9-year-old holding 2 oranges like she was presenting offerings to a small, uncertain god. "These are for you," Lily announced. Maya blinked. "For me. Dad said we had too many." Lily held them out further. "Also, I wanted to see you again because you were really calm when I fell and most adults panic, and I think that's kind of annoying." Maya looked past Lily to where Ethan was standing at the edge of the path with his hands in his pockets and an expression that said clearly he had not scripted any of this. "She's honest," Maya said. "Every single time," he said. Maya looked at the oranges, then at Lily. Then she reached out and took them both. "You want to come in?" Lily was already on the porch steps. "Yes." Ethan stayed where he was. "We don't have to." "Come in," Maya said. It came out more direct than she intended, and she saw the slight shift in his expression, not surprise exactly, but attention. The kind of attention that didn't demand anything from you, and somehow that made it harder to carry. She pushed the screen door open and led them inside. Her house was smaller than theirs, neater in a way that wasn't comfort, but control. Everything in its place, every surface wiped clean, like she'd been preparing for an inspection that never came, or maybe had already come and taken too much. There were drawings on the refrigerator. A child's drawings, crayon suns with faces a boat on water, a figure with what appeared to be very enthusiastic hair. Lily walked directly to the refrigerator and pointed at the figure. "Who is that?" "My son," Maya said. "Lucas. He drew that one last month." "How old is he?" 7. "I'm 9. Lily considered this with the authority of the older. "Is he here?" Something flickered across Maya's face fast, and then gone like a light going out, and immediately coming back on. "He's with his father this week." Lily processed this. "Oh." And then, with the devastating directness of a 9-year-old who had grown up watching her own father carry grief like a second skeleton. "Is that hard?" Maya opened her mouth, closed it. She set the oranges on the counter and turned to face Lily properly, and whatever professional composure she'd had on the porch was just gone. replaced by something raw and unguarded that she hadn't chosen to show. "Yeah," she said. "It is." Lily nodded, satisfied, not with the answer, but with the honesty of it. "My dad finds stuff hard too, but he doesn't say so. He just fixes things instead." Ethan cleared his throat from the doorway. "Lily." "It's true," Lily said, unapologetic. "It's true," he agreed quietly. "Doesn't mean we say it to people we just met." "She's not people we just met anymore," Lily said. She touched my knee. Maya laughed. It came out of her without warning, genuine and short and surprised. And Ethan watched it happen, the way you watch something unexpected and fragile carefully, without drawing too much attention to it, afraid it'll stop if you look directly at it. "She has a point," Maya said. "She usually does," Ethan said. "It's exhausting." Maya poured coffee without asking, just pulled a second mug down and then paused, looked at Ethan and raised an eyebrow. He nodded once. She poured a third mug and handed Lily a glass of orange juice that she'd apparently had ready and waiting in a way that suggested Lucas was never very far from her movements even when he wasn't there. They sat at the kitchen table. Lily ate one of the oranges in the methodical, focused way she ate everything section by section, no rush. Maya held her coffee with both hands. Ethan sat with his elbows on the table and said nothing for a moment, which was Maya was beginning to understand, not emptiness. It was presence. He was a man who could fill a silence without flooding it. "How long have you had the house next door?" Maya asked. 2 years. This is the first time we've come." She looked at him over her mug. 2 years. "I know." He didn't elaborate. "What made you come now?" He glanced at Lily, who was fully absorbed in her orange. "She asked me to. She's been asking every summer. This year I ran out of reasons to say no." Maya was quiet for a moment. "That's honest." "I try to be. Most people aren't." She said it without bitterness. Just fact. The kind of fact you arrive at after enough evidence. "Most people are scared," he said. "Same thing mostly." She looked at him. He was watching Lily with the particular focused calm of a man whose entire world had organized itself around one small person, not out of obsession, but because she was the only thing he'd had left that still needed him to keep moving forward. Maya recognized it. She'd done the same thing with Lucas, used her child like a compass when the internal one broke. "Your wife," she said carefully. "How long?" 3 years in April." He said it the way you say a date you've said so many times, it's become almost mechanical. Almost. There was still something underneath the mechanics that hadn't gone mechanical yet. Maybe never would. "I'm sorry," she said. "You said that yesterday." "I know. I meant it yesterday, and I mean it today." He nodded. "Thank you." A pause. Lily peeled the second orange and began distributing sections to both adults without being asked, placing them on the table with the efficiency of someone managing a small operation. "Lucas would like her," Maya said softly. "Tell me about him," Ethan said. She looked up. Most people who knew about Derek, who knew about the custody situation and the court dates and the grinding legal machinery she'd been living inside for the past 2 years, most of them, when the subject of Lucas came up, immediately shifted into careful territory. They asked how things were going, meaning the case. They asked if she was okay, meaning how bad was it. They did not ask to hear about Lucas himself. "He's obsessed with boats," she said. Something loosened in her voice. "Any kind. He made me watch a 3-hour documentary about container ships last month and genuinely got emotional during it." She smiled. It was the first smile Ethan had seen from her that wasn't guarded. "He cries at things he thinks are too big to fully understand. Like existentially overwhelmed. He's 7. That's a good quality," Ethan said. "In a 7-year-old or anyone else. It scares me sometimes. How much he feels. How open he still is." Her smile faded at the edges. "I keep thinking about how long that lasts. Before the world gets to it." "Lily still cries at commercials," Ethan said. Lily did not look up. "The one with the dog," she said. "It's not my fault they made it like that. I know, baby." He looked at Maya. "You protect it as long as you can. That's all you can do." Maya looked down at her coffee. "Derek would say I protected him too much. That I've made him soft. Those were his words. She said it flatly. Soft. Ethan didn't say anything. He waited. He said a lot of things, she continued, over a lot of years. And the thing about a lot of years is that eventually you stop being able to tell which thoughts are yours and which ones were put there. She paused. I thought I was a bad mother for a long time. I genuinely believed it. Because he said it enough times that it became the furniture of my mind. Just there. Part of the room. The table was very quiet. You're not, Lily said. Maya looked at her. A bad mother. Lily clarified without looking up from her orange. You knew exactly what to do when I fell. A bad mother wouldn't know that. She placed another orange section on the table in front of Maya. My dad knows what to do too. That's how I know he's a good dad, even when he finds stuff hard. Ethan looked at his daughter for a long moment. The kind of look that doesn't have a word for it in any language. He knew something that was grief and gratitude at the same time for a person so small, carrying so much wisdom she had no business having at her age. Wisdom she'd earned the hard way, and he would spend the rest of his life wishing she hadn't had to. Lily, he said finally. His voice was steady. Thank you. She shrugged. I'm just saying what's true. Maya pressed her lips together. Her eyes were bright. She looked at the ceiling for a second, the way people do when they're refusing to let something fall. How do you do that? She asked Ethan quietly when she'd steadied. Do what? Raise someone like that. He shook his head slowly. I don't know. I think she came that way. Maya looked at the child beside her. This small, direct, unafraid person who ate oranges methodically and said hard things with the comfort of someone who didn't yet understand why hard things were supposed to be kept quiet and felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been sealed for a long time, not out of healing, but out of survival, moved. Just slightly. The way a door moves when someone stands on the other side of it not yet knocking. Just present. She stood up and refilled her coffee, just to have something to do with her hands. Do you want to see the beach from the second floor? She asked. She directed it at Lily. Lily was already standing. Yes. They went upstairs. Ethan stayed at the table for a moment alone in the kitchen, with the orange peels and the 3 mugs and the refrigerator covered in Lucas's drawings. He looked at the drawing of the boat. Crayon blue, slightly lopsided, sitting on green waves that were maybe more optimistic than accurate. He looked at it for a long time. Then he heard Lily's voice upstairs, high and delighted. You can see forever from here. And heard Maya's response, lower and warmer than anything she'd used on the ground floor, and he stood up and carried the mugs to the sink and washed them, because that's what he did. He made himself useful. He fixed things. He cleaned up after other people, without being asked, not out of servitude, but out of the deep and stubborn belief that care was a language, and if words failed you, you could say it with your hands. He was drying the last mug when they came back downstairs. Dad, Lily said, urgent with excitement. There's a pelican on the roof next door. I see. A real one, just sitting there. That happens sometimes. He handed Maya the clean mug. She looked at it, then at him. And for just a second, she was completely open, not performing anything, not guarding anything, just looking at a man who had washed her dishes without discussion and dried them carefully and handed them back and asked nothing. Thank you, she said. It was about more than the mug, and they both knew it, and neither of them said so. It's nothing, he said, and meant it as a compliment, meant this is the smallest thing I can do, and I would do more if you let me, and there is no debt here, no expectation. No account being kept. She heard all of it underneath the 2 words. She was smart, and she had spent too many years with a man who weaponized kindness, who gave with one hand and took an inventory with the other, who turned every gift into a bill eventually. She was the best reader in the world of ulterior motives, because she'd spent years being tested on it without knowing she was being tested. Ethan Cole had none. She couldn't find any. And that fact, more than anything else, was what unsettled her. Because she had built her entire life around the certainty that kindness without cost did not exist. That every open hand eventually closed. That warmth was just manipulation moving slowly. And here was this man, navy broad, quietly devastating in the way that had nothing to do with how he looked, and everything to do with how he was washing her dishes, and making no face about it, and she had no framework for it. It scared her more than Derek ever had. Derek she understood. Derek was a known danger. This was something else entirely. They left around noon. Lily hugged Maya without asking permission, which startled her enough that she froze for a full second before her arms came up and closed around the child's small shoulders. And she stood there holding this girl she'd known for less than 24 hours and felt acutely and without preparation exactly how empty her house was going to be when she let go. Ethan watched that too and said nothing. Because some things don't need a witness, they just need to be allowed to happen. At the door he paused. "We're going into town later if you want a reason to leave the house." She leaned against the doorframe. "What makes you think I need a reason?" "The way you've been on that beach the same 2 times I've seen you," he said. Standing in the same spot, looking at the same horizon, not moving. A pause. "I like the view," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm not criticizing it." She looked at him for a long moment. "What time?" 3. She looked down at her feet and then back up at him with an expression that was trying very hard to be indifferent and failing in the specific way that only honesty can fail indifference. "I'll think about it." He nodded. "Okay." He turned to go. "Ethan." He turned back. She opened her mouth, closed it. Something moved across her face, something complicated and real that she hadn't planned on showing. "The thing you said yesterday, on the beach, about the suit." She looked at the porch railing. "You were right. It was the first time in a long time." He said nothing. I wanted you to know you weren't wrong." She said it carefully, like she was placing it down very precisely. "Because people say things sometimes and don't know how right they are, and it seems like I don't know. Like you should know." "Thank you for telling me," he said. Quiet and straight and no performance. "You're infuriating," she said. But there was no edge in it. "So I've been told." "By who?" "Mostly myself," he said. "Lily occasionally." She almost laughed again. Almost. She caught it this time. But not quite all the way. He left. She watched him and Lily walk back along the gravel path until they turned the corner and she couldn't see them anymore, and she stood there for a long moment after in the open doorway, one hand on the frame, letting the sea air move around her. She was still standing there when her phone rang. She looked down at the screen and the air went out of her completely. Derek. She answered it the way she always answered, spine straight, jaw set, voice flattened into something neutral and uninflectable that gave him nothing to grab onto. 3 years of practice. The same 3 years Ethan had spent perfecting his own internal armor, though she didn't know that yet, and maybe wouldn't have found comfort in it if she did. "I'm coming down," Derek said. No greeting. He'd stopped greeting her 2 marriages ago, back when he'd decided that courtesy was something you performed for people who had leverage over you, and she had none. This weekend. Her grip on the phone tightened. "Lucas isn't here." "I know where Lucas is. I put him there." A pause layered with the particular smugness she had once mistaken for confidence. "I want to talk about the hearing." "Talk to my lawyer. I'm talking to you." His voice dropped into the register he used when he wanted her to remember very clearly that she had once found him persuasive. "In person. Saturday." "No." "Maya." "No." She said it again, same weight, same flat certainty. "If you have something to say about the hearing, it goes through counsel. That's the arrangement." A beat of silence. Then, "You've gotten brave." She said nothing. "I wonder where that's coming from," he said. The words were light. They were not light. New place, new friends, that kind of thing. Another pause. "I'll see you Saturday." He hung up. She stood in the doorway with the dead phone in her hand, and the sea air around her, and the house behind her that was very clean and very quiet and very empty, and she breathed. In. Out. The way you breathe when you are teaching your body that it is still in charge of itself, still capable of doing the basic mechanical things, still running, still here. She looked down the gravel path where Ethan and Lily had walked. She thought about Lucas making drawings of boats with 2 green waves. She thought about a 9-year-old handing her orange sections without being asked. She thought about a man washing her dishes and saying it was nothing. She thought about Saturday. She put the phone in her pocket and went back inside to make lunch, and not think about any of it, which worked for approximately 4 minutes before she sat down at the kitchen table, put her face in her hands, and let herself feel very quietly and completely privately how tired she was of carrying all of it alone. Outside, the ocean kept moving. It did not ask anything. It just kept going. She did not go into town at 3 o'clock. Ethan had not expected her to. He'd made the offer the way you hold a door open, not assuming anyone will walk through it, just making sure the option exists. He and Lily went without her, drove the 20 minutes into the small coastal town, with its ice cream shops and hardware stores, and one diner that smelled like coffee and fried food, and decades of ordinary lives being lived without incident. And Lily ate a scoop of something aggressively pink, and Ethan drank coffee at the counter and said almost nothing, which the woman behind the counter seemed to find perfectly acceptable. On the way back, Lily said she didn't come. No. Why not? She had things on her mind. Lily thought about this. Is it the ex-husband I heard her on the phone when we were leaving? She said no really loud, twice. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. You weren't supposed to hear that. I wasn't trying to. It was just loud. A pause. She sounded scared. She sounded strong, Ethan said. Lily considered the distinction. Can you be both? Usually the people who sound the strongest are the most scared, he said. That's sort of what strength is, doing the thing while you're afraid of it. Lily was quiet for a moment, in the specific way she got quiet when she was storing something, filing it. Is that why you came here, even though it was hard? He didn't answer right away. Yeah, he said finally. That's why. She nodded and went back to looking out the window, satisfied. She had a gift for asking the exact question that cut to the center of something, and then letting it sit there without demanding more. And it was one of the things about her that reminded him so much of Sarah that he sometimes had to breathe through it the way you breathe through physical pain, not suppressing it, just surviving the peak of it until it leveled out. When they got back, there was a plate on their porch, a real plate ceramic with a dish towel over it. Lily lifted the towel before Ethan could stop her. Cornbread, golden, still slightly warm, cut into squares. She came, Lily said. She left food, Ethan said. Same thing. Lily picked up a piece immediately. He looked at the plate for a moment, then he picked it up and carried it inside. He didn't go knock on Maya's door. He understood because he was a man who communicated in actions rather than announcements that the cornbread was its own kind of sentence. She was saying, I didn't come, but I thought about you. I thought about coming. Here is the evidence of that. He did not need to make it a conversation. He would find another way to answer. He spent the next hour fixing the gate on Maya's side of the shared fence, which had been hanging crooked on one hinge since he'd first noticed it that morning. He had the tools. He had the time. He didn't tell her he was going to do it. He just did it with the straightforward purposefulness of a man who had learned that love, or whatever was the smaller earlier cousin of love that this was mostly a series of small practical choices made without an audience. He was finishing when he heard her screen door open. She stood on her porch with her arms crossed. She'd changed jeans now, a loose white shirt, her hair down. She looked at the gate. At his tools. At him. I didn't ask you to do that, she said. I know. The gate's been like that for 2 months. The landlord was supposed to. It took 20 minutes, he said. He picked up his tools and stood. Cornbread was good. A pause. It's my mother's recipe. Tell her it's excellent. She's in Phoenix. Something shifted in her voice. She and Derek were close for a long time. It's complicated now. He nodded. He did not say that's awful or I'm sorry or any of the other phrases people reached for when they didn't know what else to offer. He just nodded, which meant I heard that. I'm holding it. You don't have to explain further. She came down the porch steps. She stood on her side of the gate, the newly level, properly hinged gate, and looked at it, then at him. He called, she said. I figured. He's coming Saturday. She said it like she was reporting weather. Inevitable, impersonal, nothing to be done. He wants to talk about the custody hearing, in person. Are you going to see him? I told him no. Good. He'll come anyway. She said it without drama, just certainty. That's what he does. He decides what's going to happen and then it happens. He's been doing it for 8 years, and a piece of paper from a judge has slowed him down, but it hasn't stopped him. She looked at her hands. He called me brave. On the phone. He said it like it was a warning. Ethan set his toolbox down on the ground. He gave her his full attention, not the polite attention people give when they're waiting for their turn to speak, but the real kind. The kind that costs something. What did he mean by it? He asked. He thinks someone gave me confidence, something new. He was fishing. She looked up. He always knows when something's changed. He had a radar for it. All the years we were married, any time I made a friend or found something that made me feel like I was more than what he'd decided I was, he found it, and he removed it. The air between them held the weight of that for a moment. Not a threat, she said quickly. I'm not saying I don't want you to think you need to, Maya. His voice was quiet and completely even. I'm not afraid of him. She looked at him. You don't know him. No, but I know the type. Something in his voice shifted, not cold, but settled. The way bedrock is settled. I've dealt with men like that. Men who control through anticipation. Who make you feel like they're everywhere so you police yourself for them. He paused. The only thing that actually stops them is when someone refuses to be managed. She was very still. That's easier to say than to do. I know it is. You haven't spent 8 years having your confidence surgically removed by someone who told you they loved you. No, he said. I haven't. He didn't try to match what she'd experienced with something of his own. He didn't equate. I'm not pretending I have. She exhaled, uncrossed her arms. I know. She sat down on the porch step, her side of the gate, and put her elbows on her knees. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. It's a reflex, she said. I apologize when I push back. Derek trained that in. She said it with the clinical clarity of someone who had spent a lot of time in therapy parsing the difference between who they were and who they'd been shaped to be. I'm still untraining it. That's allowed to take time, he said. He sat down on his side of the gate, mirroring her without thinking about it. The two of them on either side of the fixed hinge elbows on knees, watching the last of the afternoon light. What was she like? Maya asked. Sarah. He didn't tense. He'd expected it. She was building the same kind of understanding of him that he was building of her, and Sarah was the thing he carried most visibly, even when he said nothing, even when he said everything else. Loud, he said, and almost smiled. In the best way. She had no volume control for joy. When she was happy about something, everyone in a 3-block radius knew it. He paused. And she was stubborn. God, she was stubborn. She would argue with a GPS, out loud, telling it was wrong. He shook his head slowly. She was usually right. Maya smiled. It was a gentle one, an honoring one. Lily got that, both of it. He agreed. The volume and the stubbornness. He looked at his hands. She died of an aneurysm. No warning. She was 34. He said it clean the way he'd practiced it, the way you practice things that would destroy you if you let them be fully felt every time they were spoken. I was on deployment. I got the call and I was... He stopped. I was 10,000 miles away and there was nothing I could do, and she was already... He stopped again. Breathed. Lily was 6. She woke up and her mother wasn't there and I wasn't there, and her Aunt Sarah's sister was the one who had to tell her. Maya said nothing. She didn't try to fill it. I got home 4 days later, he said. And Lily looked at me at the airport, and she said she was 6 years old. She said, Daddy, I already cried all mine. It's okay if you need to cry yours. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't. Not then. I had a child looking at me, and I had to keep moving. He looked up. I still haven't really. Not the way I probably should. You will, Maya said, when it's safe. He looked at her. When does it get safe? She thought about it honestly. I don't know. Maybe when you stop needing to be the one who holds everything together. Maybe when someone makes it clear they can hold some of it for you. She paused. Or maybe you just build a new kind of safe. Not the same as before, just different architecture. He turned that over. Different architecture, he repeated. I'm still building mine, she said. I don't have a blueprint. Nobody does. No, she agreed. They really don't. Lily appeared at the door of their house and leaned out. Dad, the cornbread is gone. All of it. That was me. I'm not sorry. Ethan looked at her. That was supposed to last 2 days. It was incredible. Lily looked at Maya. Are you a professional? I'm a landscape architect, Maya said. Lily processed this. That's plants. Mostly. Do you also do the cooking professionally? No. You should. Lily disappeared back inside. Maya laughed again, a real one this time unguarded, and Ethan held very still, the way you hold still when something you've been waiting for without knowing you were waiting for, it finally arrives. She's something, Maya said. She's everything, he said. Quiet, absolute. Maya looked at him. The directness of it, the complete lack of performance, the way he said it, like it was simply the truest thing and required no decoration, settled in her chest, in a place she hadn't felt occupied in a very long time. I'm scared about Saturday, she said. Straight out, no preamble, like she'd decided to stop editing herself for at least the length of this conversation. I know. I don't want to be scared. I've been scared of him for 8 years and I'm exhausted by it. Fear and exhaustion are different from weakness, he said. You can be scared and still have him not be able to touch anything that matters. He's already touching Lucas, she said, and her voice finally broke on it. Not dramatically, not loudly, just a small clean fracture in the bottom of the word, the kind that tells you exactly where the real wound is. Every week Lucas comes back from Derek's and he's different. Quieter. He looks at me like he's checking whether I'm still the same person he left. Like he's not sure what version of reality he's coming back to. She pressed her lips together. He's 7. He shouldn't be calibrating anything. He should just be here. Ethan said nothing for a long moment. Then, tell me about the hearing. She looked at him. Why? Because I'm asking, he said, and because you're carrying it alone and you don't have to. Something behind her eyes shifted. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at the ground. Then she started talking. Really talking, not the careful, managed version she gave her lawyer, or the abbreviated version she gave the few friends who still had the patience for it. But the full version, the one with all the texture and weight and legal complexity and emotional brutality of 2 years of fighting a man who had more resources and fewer scruples than she did. She talked about the filing and the counter-filing about Derek's lawyer, who was very expensive, and very good about the guardian ad litem, who had seemed sympathetic, but whom Derek had somehow gotten to, because he always somehow got to people about the witnesses. Derek had lined up, her former colleagues, her own mother, for a period people she'd trusted, and she talked about Lucas's school counselor, who was on her side, and had documented things carefully, and she talked about what Lucas had said to her 3 months ago quietly in the car after school, about something he'd seen at Derek's house that she had written down word for word, and given to her lawyer, and that she was not going to repeat out loud, because she hadn't been able to say it out loud to another human being yet, without something happening to her breathing. Ethan listened to all of it. He did not interrupt. He did not offer solutions. He did not make the face people made. He just listened the way he'd been trained to listen in operational briefings, fully and completely absorbing every detail, building the map of it in his mind. When she finished, she was slightly breathless, like she'd been holding it at altitude and just came down. Okay, he said. She blinked. Okay. Okay, he repeated. I heard all of it. I just told you a lot. I know. Most people, by the time I get to the part about the guardian ad litem there, I can see them calculating how to escape the conversation. I'm not most people, he said. No arrogance in it, just fact. She studied him. No, she said slowly. You're really not. When is the hearing exactly? 3 weeks. What do you need between now and then? She stared at him. What? What do you actually need, practically, to be ready? She shook her head slowly. Ethan. You have good documentation. You have a counselor on your side. You have Lucas, who sounds like a kid who knows the truth, even if he's not sure yet he's allowed to say it. He ticked these off, not mechanically, but deliberately building something, organizing the facts into a shape she could stand on. What's missing? She was quiet for a long moment. Me, she said finally. I'm missing. I fall apart in that room. Every time I've been in a room with Derek in a legal context, he does something with his face, this specific thing, and I feel 6 inches tall, and I know intellectually that it's manipulation, but my nervous system hasn't gotten the memo, and she pressed the heel of her hand to her sternum. I fall apart. No, Ethan said. She looked at him. You haven't fallen apart, he said. You're still here. You still have a lawyer. You still have documentation. You still have Lucas talking to a counselor who's on record. He leaned forward slightly. Falling apart would have looked completely different. What you've done is survive it. That's not the same thing. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were very bright. Don't, she said in a voice that was trying to hold something back. Don't what? Don't make me cry out here in front of the gate you just fixed. He held up both hands. Okay. She laughed wet, undignified, completely real. She covered her face with both hands for a second, and then pulled them down and looked at him with eyes that were shining, and a jaw that was still set, and an expression that was such a precise mix of mortification and relief that it was almost impossible to look at directly. I hate this, she said. The crying or the needing help? Both. I know that one too, he said. She looked at him. He looked at her. The gate between them sat perfectly level on its new hinge, solid and functional, and no longer broken. Lily's voice came from the house again. Dad, can Maya eat dinner with us? They both looked toward the sound. You don't have to, Ethan said, turning back. I know, Maya said. And then, what are you making? Lily picks on Fridays. What does Lily pick? Whatever she finds, he said. It's usually either inspired or alarming. Maya stood up. She brushed the back of her jeans off with both hands. She looked at the gate, then at him. Inspired or alarming, she said. I can work with that. She walked through the gate he had fixed without being asked, through the space between their two houses, through the careful distance she had been maintaining since the moment she first saw him on the beach. And she kept walking toward his front door, and he picked up his toolbox and followed her. Neither of them said anything about it. Some things didn't need to be announced. They just needed to be done. One step at a time through a gate that worked now towards something that neither of them had a name for yet, but that both of them recognized. The way you recognize a language you were told you'd forgotten, but apparently hadn't. Not all the way. Not the parts that mattered. Inside, Lily was standing in the kitchen, holding a can of black beans and a box of pasta with the energy of someone who had just had a vision. I have an idea, she said. That's what I'm afraid of, Ethan said. It's going to be great, Lily said. She looked at Maya. Do you know how to cook? I make very good cornbread. We know, Lily said. That's why I asked. She held out the can of beans. Okay, here's the plan. Maya took the can. Ethan set down his toolbox. And the three of them stood in the small kitchen of a beach house that had been empty for 2 years and made something out of what they had, which turned out to be enough. It was almost always enough when you stopped waiting for more. Dinner had lasted 3 hours, not because the food was extraordinary. Lily's black bean pasta had been charitably an experience, but because something had loosened at that table the way things loosen when people stop performing and start just being in a room together. Maya had stayed through the dishes through Lily's extended campaign to teach her a card game whose rules changed every round, through the moment when Lily fell asleep, sitting up on the couch mid-sentence, and Ethan carried her to bed with the practiced ease of a man who had done it 10,000 times, and through the quiet that settled over the house afterward, like something that had been waiting patiently all evening for its turn. She and Ethan had sat on the back porch with decaf coffee and said very little for a long time, which was, she was discovering one of his particular fluencies. He could be silent with you in a way that didn't feel like absence. It felt like company. She hadn't been in the company of a silence like that in so long, she'd almost forgotten it existed. She'd left around 10. He walked her to the gate, the fixed gate, and said goodnight without ceremony, without anything that asked for more than she was ready to give. She'd gone inside and stood in her kitchen for a moment in the dark, not turning on the lights, just standing in the particular kind of quiet that follows warmth. The kind that's almost warm itself. She'd slept better than she had in months. She woke up Saturday with Derek's name already in her body before she fully opened her eyes. That was how it worked. Before thought, before language, her nervous system had its own memory of him, and it announced itself at the first crack of consciousness, like a fist on a door. She lay still and breathed. In, out. The way her therapist had taught her 3 years ago when she'd finally said the things out loud to a professional that she'd been saying only to herself. In through the nose, out through the mouth, 4 counts each, until the body remembered it was no longer in the room with him, no longer subject to the particular gravity of his presence. It took longer than usual. She got up, made coffee, stood at the kitchen window. The morning was clear. She could see the beach from here, the strip of it between the houses white and quiet. No one on it yet. Her phone was on the counter. She looked at it the way you look at something you'd rather not touch but can't quite leave alone. No messages, not yet. It was only 7. Derek, for all his unpredictability, had never been a morning person. That had always been hers. The early hours, the quiet before he woke up, the part of the day she'd learned to finish her most important thinking in before he came downstairs and rearranged the air. She heard footsteps on the gravel path. Then a knock, not on her door but on the gate, 2 clean knocks spaced evenly. She knew without looking that it was Ethan's particular rhythm. She went to the door. He was on his side of the gate, running clothes hair damp, breathing steady. He'd already been out. "Wanted to check in before I took Lily to the farmer's market," he said. She leaned against the doorframe. "You're up early." "Always am." He looked at her face the way he did, not intrusively, but carefully reading the information available without demanding more. "How are you doing? Ask me again at noon." He nodded. "Do you want company this morning or space?" She considered both as actual options, which was itself something she hadn't been offered in a long time, the genuine choice presented without preference, without the thumb already on the scale. "Company," she said. Then, because it surprised her to say it, "I think I want company." "Give me 20 minutes, he said. "I'll drop Lily with the Hendersons, the family 2 doors down. She's already made friends. I have no idea how." "She walked up and told their daughter she liked her shoes," Maya said. "I watched it happen from my porch. The Hendersons' daughter Emma, she looked like her entire day had been rearranged." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I raised a force of nature." "You raised a human being who still believes she's allowed to want things," Maya said. "That's rarer than you'd think." He was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," he said. "I know." 20 minutes later, he was back without Lily, and they walked to the beach together, not side by side exactly, but close, the proximity of 2 people who have decided they are in the same place on purpose. They walked without destination. The water was on their left. The morning was cool enough to keep moving comfortable. "Tell me something that has nothing to do with Derek or Sarah or lawyers or grief," Maya said after a while. He thought about it. "I can rebuild almost any engine made before 1990. She glanced at him. "Really?" "My grandfather had a garage. I spent summers there from age 7 until I enlisted. There is nothing wrong with an internal combustion engine that I cannot diagnose by sound. That's very specific. You said something with nothing to do with grief. That qualifies." She smiled. "Your turn. Ask me something." "What made you choose landscape architecture?" She thought about it, not the answer she'd given professionally, the polished one, but the real one. "I like making things grow in places they weren't supposed to," she said. "Difficult soil, weird light, conditions that shouldn't support much." She paused. "I like proving that something can be beautiful even in a hard environment." He looked at her. "I know how that sounds," she said. "It sounds true," he said. "That's why it sounds like that." They walked for another half hour talking about things that weren't the things they were both really talking about, which is its own kind of intimacy. The oblique language of 2 people who are learning each other's shape by mapping around the edges first. He told her about the most beautiful place he'd ever been. Deployed, a coastal region he couldn't fully name, but could describe in terms of the specific quality of light on the water at 5 in the morning. She told him about a garden she'd designed for a family in Connecticut. Her best work, she thought, a garden built around a child's grave that had eventually been photographed for a design magazine, and that she'd never told anyone was about grief, because grief was already in it, and the people who understood would know. "I thought about that garden a lot," she said, "when things got bad with Derek. I thought about the fact that I had made something beautiful in the worst possible circumstance somewhere outside myself." She looked at the water. "I kept it like an argument, evidence, that I was capable of something." "You never needed evidence," Ethan said. "I know that now." A beat. "I didn't then." They were turning back toward the houses when Maya's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Every muscle in her body changed, not dramatically, not in a way a stranger would notice, but Ethan was not a stranger anymore, and he saw it. The small reorganization of her entire self into something braced. She answered. "I told you no." Derek's voice came through the phone. Ethan caught pieces of it, not words exactly, but the shape of his, speaking the smooth and unhurried cadence of a man who had never once in his life felt the need to rush because he was absolutely certain the conversation would end where he intended. "I'm here," Derek said. The words Ethan caught clearly because they were louder than the rest. "I'm in the driveway." Maya stopped walking. Ethan stopped beside her. She turned, and they both looked toward the houses. A car was parked in Maya's driveway. A black car, expensive, the kind that was designed to communicate something about its owner before the owner had even opened the door. The door opened. Derek Callahan was in the way of men who had built their power on appearance, exactly what you would have expected from the car. Early 50s. Tall, well put together, wearing a weekend casualness that was as calculated as everything else about him. He had the face of a man who had spent decades practicing sincerity and was now fluent in it, which was the most dangerous possible combination. He saw them both. His eyes went to Maya first, then to Ethan, and something happened in his expression, a very small and very fast recalibration, like a predator encountering unexpected terrain and adjusting without revealing the adjustment. He smiled. "Maya," he said, as if they'd arranged this, as if he'd been invited. "You need to leave," she said. Her voice was steady. Ethan heard the effort it cost, and he suspected Derek heard it too, and that Derek filed it away. "I just want 5 minutes," Derek said, still smiling. He walked toward them with the ease of a man who had never once believed a boundary applied to him. "Just a conversation." "We have lawyers for conversations. This isn't a legal matter. This is a family matter." His eyes slid to Ethan with the precision of a man who used his eyes like instruments. "I don't think we've met." Ethan said nothing. Derek waited. When nothing came, he tilted his head slightly, the tell of a man unaccustomed to being left in silence. "Friend of Maya's?" "Yes," Ethan said. One word. He didn't offer his hand. He didn't move. Derek's smile adjusted by a fraction. "Nice to meet you." He turned back to Maya. 5 minutes. Inside. Just to talk." "No." "Maya." She said no. Ethan's voice was not raised. It was not aggressive. It was the voice of someone who has decided something completely and is not interested in debating it. The voice of a man who had given orders in situations where the wrong word cost lives and had learned very precisely how to make a sentence final. "That's the answer. The answer won't change." Derek looked at him with the specific expression of a man deciding whether this was a threat worth engaging or an obstacle worth going around. He was calculating. Ethan could see him calculating. It was like watching someone do math in real-time inputs, variables, cost, benefit, outcome. "I'm not looking for trouble," Derek said pleasantly. "Good," Ethan said. "Then you'll leave." A pause. Derek looked at Maya again. "We need to talk about Lucas, about the arrangement." "Through counsel," Maya said. Her voice hadn't broken. Ethan didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on Derek, which was where the information was, but he could feel her holding herself together with both hands behind the composure. "The arrangement isn't working." Derek said, his voice dropping into something that sounded almost reasonable, almost concerned, the voice he'd spent years using to make her doubt her own perceptions. "Lucas is struggling. I'm worried about him. I think you should be too. Don't, Maya said. Don't use him right now. Not here. I'm not using him. I'm his father. He spread his hands. Reasonable. Concerned. The whole production. I want what's best for him. I've always wanted what's best for him. He's 7 years old, Maya said. And he came home from your house last month and sat in the car for 10 minutes before he could come inside, and when I asked him what was wrong, he said he was trying to remember what safe felt like. Her voice was not breaking now. It was something else, something that had passed through breaking and come out the other side harder and clearer and with the quality of something that has been through fire and is no longer afraid of heat. Don't talk to me about what's best for him. Derek's pleasantness thinned. Just slightly. Just enough. That's a serious accusation, he said. It's a serious truth, she said. I'd be careful about what you say before a hearing. I'd be careful about showing up at someone's property after you were told not to come, Ethan said. His voice had not changed, not 1 degree. That's the kind of thing that gets documented. Derek looked at him again. This time, the calculation in his eyes had a different quality, the specific assessment of a man deciding whether he'd underestimated something. He studied Ethan the way you study terrain, looking for the soft place the way in. He didn't find one. Ethan had no soft places that were visible from the outside. He was built not physically, though that was true, but structurally. He had the interior architecture of a man who had held position under conditions that would have dissolved lesser frameworks. And Derek, who was very good at finding the cracks in people, found no cracks here. Navy, Derek said. Reading the bearing, the stillness, the particular discipline of the body. Ethan said nothing. I respect that, Derek said. He said it in the voice of a man who respects nothing, but finds the performance of respect occasionally useful. He looked at Maya. We'll finish this through the lawyers. He made it sound like a concession, like he was being generous. But Maya. He waited until she looked at him. Think carefully. About what you want this to look like. He let that sit exactly long enough to be a threat without being prosecutable as one. For Lucas. He turned and walked back to his car. He did not hurry. He didn't need to. Men like Derek never hurried because hurrying would suggest they had somewhere to be that was more important than wherever they were. He got in the car. He drove away. Maya let out a breath that she had apparently been holding for the past 4 minutes. She turned away from the road and Ethan saw her face, the jaw still set, the color high in her cheeks. Her eyes doing the thing he'd seen before where she was refusing actively and with great effort to let something fall. You okay? He said. I'm furious, she said. But yes. She looked at her hands. They were shaking slightly. She looked at them like she was surprised. Why are my hands doing that? Adrenaline. Give it a minute. She pressed them flat against her thighs. He does that, she said. Every time. He leaves, and my body acts like the danger just arrived instead of just left. Because it learned that leaving didn't mean safe, Ethan said. It learned that it was just the intermission. She looked at him. Something in her face changed. That's exactly what it is. Your system's not broken, he said. It's accurate. It just needs a different input long enough to recalibrate. She shook her head slowly. You're very strange, Ethan Cole. So I've been told. By who? Mostly people who expected something simpler. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, He saw you and he recalculated. I watched him do it. I know. That doesn't happen often. He usually decides what something is and that's what it is. He's used to people performing, Ethan said. When someone doesn't, he doesn't know which script to run. She thought about that. Is that what you were doing, not performing? I was just standing there, he said. That's all. She let out a short, compressed sound that was almost a laugh. That's all. She looked at the empty driveway. He's going to find out more about you. He'll dig. He does that. Let him, Ethan said. There's nothing to find that I'm ashamed of. Maya looked at him. She had the expression of someone encountering an idea so foreign, it required translation. The idea that a person could simply have nothing to hide, not because they were simple, but because they had made peace with what they were. She had spent 8 years with a man who hid everything, including himself, especially himself, a man who was so many layered performances that she wasn't sure there'd been a real person in there at all. The plainness of Ethan the radical, almost incomprehensible plainness of a man who was exactly what he appeared to be, was the most disorienting thing she'd encountered in years. "I need to call my lawyer," she said. "Go," he said. "Thank you," she said. "For..." She stopped. There was too much to specify. For standing there. For not running a script. For not telling her it was fine when it wasn't. For making Derek for one moment feel what it was like to be in a room with someone who couldn't be moved. "It's nothing," he said, and meant it the same way he'd meant it when he'd handed back her clean mug. This is the smallest thing. The baseline. What comes next is more. She went inside. He waited until he heard the door close behind her, then stood in the driveway for a moment looking at the spot where Derek's car had been. He knew that type. He'd encountered it in rooms with more stakes than this, men who wielded authority like a weapon, and called it leadership, men who managed through intimidation, and called it discipline. He'd watched what they did to the people underneath them, over enough time and with enough proximity, that he knew exactly how long the damage lasted, and how quietly it lived in a person long after the source of it was gone. He thought about Maya's hands shaking. He thought about Lucas, 7 years old, sitting in a car, trying to remember what safe felt like. He picked up his phone and called the Hendersons to check on Lily, who was reportedly in the middle of a fierce board game and wanted 20 more minutes, which he granted. He walked back to his porch and sat down and looked at the ocean. He was not a man who made declarations. He was not a man who announced intentions or made promises out loud to himself or to the sky or to the vague and general universe. He was a man who decided things quietly and then acted on them without fanfare. He had decided something. He wasn't entirely sure when it had happened, somewhere between a plate of cornbread left on a porch and a red bikini, and a 9-year-old handing out orange sections, and a woman who described her best work as evidence that she was capable of something which she had never needed evidence of, not for a single day, not once. He sat there for a while. The ocean kept moving. The morning moved past noon. He heard Lily's voice coming down the path before he saw her talking to Emma Henderson, at full volume, about something important. He stood up and went inside to start lunch. He did not know what 3 weeks from now would look like. He did not know what the hearing would bring, or what Derek would do between now and then, or what Lucas would have to carry to the stand of his own short life and say out loud in a room full of adults who were supposed to protect him, but had already failed him in the ways that counted. He knew one thing. He had said he was here on the same beach for the same week. That had been true when he said it, and it was still true. It would continue to be true in whatever form the next week, and the week after that, and the 3 weeks after that required it to take. He was not going anywhere. He had spent 3 years standing still in the middle of his own grief and calling it stability. He understood now that it had just been waiting, that all the stillness had been accumulation, not stasis, and that what he'd been accumulating was the capacity to be present for something that required everything he had. He washed his hands at the sink. He heard the screen door open, and Lily came in breathless with sand on both knees and a look of complete satisfaction on her face. "I won," she announced. "At what?" "Everything," she said. He looked at his daughter. He thought about what Maya had said: "You raised a human being who still believes she's allowed to want things," and he felt something shift in his chest that was not grief. That was not the hand squeezing around the absence of Sarah. It was something different, something that pointed forward. "Go wash up," he said, "then we're going next door." Lily's eyes went bright. "Is Maya eating with us again?" "If she wants to." "She'll want to," Lily said with complete confidence, and disappeared into the bathroom. He stood in the kitchen for a moment, looked out the window toward the house 2 doors down, toward the woman inside it, who was probably on the phone with her lawyer right now. Voice steady, spine straight, working the problem the way she always worked. The problem alone, capable, exhausted, and refusing to stop. He picked up his phone and sent a text. 3 words. "Lunch is ready." He set the phone down and started cooking. Across the gravel path he heard a door open. She came through the gate without knocking. That was the first thing Ethan noticed, that she didn't pause at the threshold, the way she had every time before that small hesitation. she carried like a habit she hadn't decided yet to break. This time she just came through, and he heard the gate latch behind her, and when she appeared at the screen door, she had her phone in one hand, and the expression of someone who had just finished a hard conversation, and was still in the slight daze that follows. He handed her a glass of water without a word. She drank half of it. Then, "My lawyer says Derek showing up like that could actually help us. Documented violation of the informal agreement to communicate through counsel." She set the glass down. She sounded almost pleased. "I'm not sure how I feel about that." "Pleased is fine," Ethan said. "He handed you something." "He always thinks he's doing the handing," she said. "He never sees it when it goes the other way." She sat down at the kitchen counter and looked around the kitchen at Lily's drawings Lily had somehow taped to his refrigerator since they'd arrived at the toolbox, still sitting by the back door at the domestic comfortable clutter of a house that was actually being lived in rather than maintained. Something in her expression softened. Not collapsed, just settled. "How do you do that?" she asked. "Do what? Make a place feel like somewhere in a week?" She looked at him. "I've had my house for 2 years, and it still feels like somewhere I'm staying temporarily." "Lily," he said simply. "She puts things on walls. She moves furniture. She leaves evidence everywhere she goes." He glanced toward the hall where the sound of running water indicated Lily was still in the bathroom. "I used to straighten everything behind her, when Sarah first died. I kept the house like a document, everything in order, nothing out of place." He paused. "Then one day, Lily taped a drawing of a dragon to the bathroom mirror, and when I went to take it down, she looked at me in a way that—" He stopped, picked up the spatula, and did something unnecessary with the pan. "I left the dragon up." Maya looked at him. "Where is it now?" "Picture frame," he said. "Living room, at home." She was quiet for a moment. Sarah would have liked that. He turned to look at her. Nobody said things like that to him. Not casually, not with that kind of quiet certainty, not as comfort rather than condolence. "Yeah," he said. His voice was even. She would have. Lily came out of the bathroom with her hair pushed sideways from towel drying, and immediately went to stand beside Maya at the counter with the focused proximity of a child who has decided someone belongs in the kitchen with them. "What are we making?" "Your father is making something," Maya said. "I'm supervising." "She's excellent at that," Ethan said. "I am," Maya agreed. And the ease of it, the way it came out, the lightness made Lily grin the specific grin she got when she sensed the adults around her were genuinely okay. The grin that Ethan recognized as her truest happiness, because it meant she wasn't monitoring anything, wasn't managing anyone, was just a kid in a kitchen on a Saturday. He made lunch. They ate it at the table, all three of them, and the conversation went sideways into Lily's theory that pelicans were secretly intelligent and were choosing to be near humans strategically, and Maya challenged this with enough specificity about actual bird cognition that Lily's eyes went wide and she said, "You know about birds." And Maya said, "I know about ecosystems, which includes birds, which means I know about pelicans." And Lily said, "I want to know about ecosystems." And Maya said, "Then let me tell you about ecosystems." And they were still talking about it when the plates were cleared. Ethan washed up and said nothing and let it happen. The week moved. It moved differently than any week Ethan had experienced in 3 years. Not faster or slower exactly, but fuller. They fell into a loose and unannounced pattern that no one designed and no one questioned. Mornings, Ethan ran. Maya was sometimes on the beach when he came back, sometimes not. Afternoons belonged to Lily, who had established herself as a small social force on the stretch of beach between the houses, and whose activities increasingly included both Maya and Emma Henderson, and one occasion, a sandcastle project of such ambition that Ethan had to help with the structural engineering. Evenings wound toward each other without effort. Someone started cooking, and the others arrived, and they ate and talked and sat on the porch afterward in the particular silence that had become theirs. Lucas came back on Wednesday. Maya had driven to get him, and Ethan heard the car in the driveway, and heard the doors, and heard a child's voice, and stayed inside, because this was not his moment to be present in. An hour later, a knock at the gate. He opened it to find Maya with a 7-year-old beside her, who was wearing a striped shirt, and looking at Ethan with the direct and completely unself-conscious assessment that children perform before they've learned that looking at someone directly can be considered rude. "This is Lucas," Maya said. "I know about boats," Lucas said immediately. Not as introduction, as fact. As the most important thing about himself, he had determined to lead with. "I know about engines," Ethan said. Lucas processed this. "What kind?" "Mostly internal combustion, some marine." Lucas's expression shifted into something that could only be described as escalating interest. "Marine-like boat engines. Marine-like boat engines." Lucas looked at his mother. His mother looked like she might cry, which she was absolutely not going to do in front of her son, and Ethan could see the effort it cost her. This small boy in his striped shirt standing in a gate with no hesitation, leading with the best of himself, without anyone having to pull it out of him. This child she had fought for, and was still fighting for, still wholly himself, after everything that had worked to diminish that. "Can I come in?" Lucas asked Ethan. "Lucas," Maya started. "Yeah," Ethan said. "Come in." Lily was on the back porch when they came through, reading with the dedicated anti-social focus she brought to books. She looked up when Lucas appeared. Lucas looked at her. A moment passed in the particular way moments pass between children deciding whether to be allies. "Do you know about boats?" Lucas asked. "I know about dragons," Lily said. "Are those related?" "Probably," Lily said. She scooted over on the bench. "Sit here, I'll explain." Lucas sat. Lily explained. It was, as far as Ethan could tell, deeply incoherent, and Lucas was absolutely captivated by it. Maya stood in the doorway and watched her son laugh at something Lily said, and pressed her fingers briefly to her lips, and looked at the sky for a second the way she'd been doing all week when she was refusing to let something fall. "He's okay," Ethan said quietly beside her. "He is?" she said. "Right now he is." She let out a slow breath. "I have to hold on to that. Right now in this moment, he is completely okay." She looked at Lucas at the way he was sitting forward, elbows on knees, fully engaged, fully present, fully 7 years old, and not carrying anything heavier than curiosity. Derek thinks he can take this from him, that if he controls the environment long enough, Lucas stops being this. She gestured slightly toward her son. "This open, this easy. He thinks he can make Lucas into whatever is more manageable." "He can't," Ethan said. "He's made progress," she said quietly. "The car thing, sitting in the car trying to remember what safe feels like. That's progress on Derek's side. That's damage." Her jaw tightened. "That's why the hearing matters. That's why I need to—" She stopped. "I have to be someone different in that room. I have to be someone who doesn't disappear when he looks at me." "You're not going to disappear," Ethan said. She looked at him. "You didn't disappear on Saturday," he said. "He stood in that driveway and ran every instrument he had, and you didn't give him a single thing to work with." He held her gaze. "That was you. That wasn't me standing there. I was 3 feet away doing nothing. That was you." She was quiet for a moment. "You weren't doing nothing. I was standing still." "Ethan." She said his name with a specificity that made him pay attention. "There is a very large difference between someone standing beside you and standing alone. I've been standing alone for 3 years. You were not doing nothing." He held that. Let it land where it was meant to land, which was somewhere he hadn't let much land in a long time. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said back, and almost smiled. "You're learning." "I'm a slow study." "You really aren't," she said, and walked out to the porch to sit with the kids. The last 2 days of the week moved the way last days move, when you don't want them to, with a clarity and a weight that ordinary days don't have, every moment slightly more itself than usual, because you're aware it's finite. Ethan felt it. He suspected Maya felt it too, though neither of them named it. On the last night after Lucas and Lily were both inside watching something on Lily's tablet, with the volume low and the complicit peace of 2 children who have agreed to wind down without being asked, Ethan and Maya sat on the back porch of his house. Stars were out. The ocean was dark and constant. "The hearing is in 11 days, she said. "I know. I keep running it in my head. What he'll say. What his lawyer will say, what Lucas will have to... She stopped. They might ask Lucas to speak. His counselor thinks he's ready. I think he's ready, but I hate that he has to be ready. I hate that readiness is something we've had to build in him for this. He's ready, Ethan said. I spent 2 days watching that kid. He knows what's true. He knows the difference between his mother's house and his father's house. He knows what safe feels like. The car thing wasn't permanent damage, Maya. That was a 7-year-old in an impossible situation doing his best. He came through that gate and led with boats. That kid is intact. She turned her head and looked at him. In the low light from the house behind them, her face was very clear. Come to the hearing, she said. He looked at her. I'm not asking you to. She pressed her lips together. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to say anything or be anything. She stopped. I'd like someone in that room who knows what I look like when I'm not afraid, so I can remember it exists. She paused. That version of me. I want someone there who's seen it. He said nothing for a moment. Maya. His voice was very quiet. I was already going to ask if you wanted me there. She looked at him. I was trying to figure out how to offer without making it... He stopped. Without it being more than you wanted. She let out a slow breath. It's not more than I want. A beat of silence. The real kind, the full kind. The kind that holds a great deal in a small space. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. She looked out at the ocean. He looked at the side of her face, at the jaw that was no longer set against anything, at the particular quiet of someone who has put something down after carrying it for a very long time and is just beginning to feel the difference in their hands. What happens after the vacation ends? She said. Not anxious, genuinely asking. Asking the way you ask when you want the honest answer, rather than the comfortable one. You live 2 hours from the base, he said. He'd looked this up. He hadn't told her he'd looked it up. I've done longer distances for less. She looked at him. For less. For a lot less, he said. Quiet, straight. She held his gaze for a long moment. The ocean moved. The stars were where they were. Nothing about the moment performed itself for anyone. I'm not easy, she said. I want you to know that. I'm in the middle of a legal battle, and I have a kid who's going to need a lot, and I still flinch at loud voices, and I apologize when I shouldn't, and Maya. He said her name the way she'd said his, with a specificity, an attention that stopped the sentence. I have a 9-year-old who talks to pelicans and a grief I've been saving up for 3 years and a toolbox I brought on vacation. He paused. Nobody's easy. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, I wore the red bikini today. He glanced at her. On the beach this morning while you were running. I wore it. She looked at her hands. And I stood there and I thought, this one's mine. This is just mine. Not for anyone. Not against anyone. She paused. It felt different than the first time. How? Like I meant it, she said. The first time I was trying to mean it. This time I just did. He nodded slowly. Good. It's a small thing. Small things are how it happens, he said. The big changes. They're just a lot of small things stacked up until they have enough weight to move something. She looked at him. When did you get so wise about that? About the same time I stopped pretending the small things didn't count, he said. Which took a while. She smiled, the full one, the unguarded one. The one he'd seen for the first time with Lily at the kitchen table and had been watching for since, because it changed her entire face into something that was just her, just exactly her, no armor in it. Thank you, she said. For what specifically? For the gate, she said. For the dishes. For Saturday. For listening to all of it. She paused. For not running a script. Thank you, he said. She looked at him. For what? For the cornbread? He said. For telling me when I was right. For asking me things about Sarah that weren't condolences. He paused. For letting Lily explain dragons to your son. She laughed. The sound of it went out into the night air and didn't need to go anywhere specific. It was just there, real and warm and belonging to no one but itself. She's going to be extraordinary, Maya said. Lily, She already is. She already is, he agreed. They were quiet together for a while. Not the careful quiet of two people being polite. The real quiet. The kind that you don't look for, but recognize immediately when it arrives, the quiet of two people who don't need to fill the space between them, because the space between them doesn't feel like absence. On the last morning, Ethan was on the beach before the sun was fully up. He ran. He came back. He stood at the water's edge and looked at the horizon, and thought about a woman he had loved completely and lost without warning, and carried in the house of himself ever since. He thought about her with his eyes open, which he hadn't done in a long time. He usually held her in the dark, in the before sleep, in the private interior, where grief lives when you're still functional on the outside. He let himself think about her in the full morning light. The loudness, the stubbornness, the way she'd argue with a GPS and be right. The way she'd looked at Lily from the very first day, like she already knew exactly who Lily was going to become. The way she had loved him without making him smaller, which he only understood the full value of now, having watched what the opposite of that did to a person over 8 years. He missed her. He let himself miss her completely out loud in his chest without pushing it to a manageable volume. It moved through him like weather, not destroying anything, just passing, which was all grief ever was when you finally stopped fighting it. Just weather. Just the atmosphere of having loved someone. When it passed, he was still there, still standing, still himself. He heard footsteps in the sand behind him and turned. Maya was walking toward him in the red bikini, Lucas 2 steps ahead of her, racing toward the water, Lily coming behind with a boogie board nearly her own size that she was dragging with absolute determination. The morning was clear. The water was flat. Lucas hit the surf line and shrieked at the cold and kept going. Ethan watched Lily drop the board and run in after him, both of them immediately involved in something loud and cooperative and joyful, and completely unconscious of being observed. Maya reached him and stood beside him at the water's edge. He got up early, she said about Lucas. Excited about the ocean. Lily's been up since 5, Ethan said. Same reason. They stood side by side and watched their children in the water. Lucas had his arms out for balance against the small waves. Lily was instructing him in something, gesturing with authority, and he was listening with full attention, and they had known each other for 2 days. Maya reached out and found his hand. Not dramatically, not with announcement. She just reached out, and her hand found his, and he closed his fingers around it, and they stood there. This morning, she said. Lucas woke up, and the first thing he said was, "Is Lily going to be at the beach?" She paused. That was the first thing. Not Derek. Not the hearing. Not anything hard, just is Lily going to be at the beach? Ethan looked at the boy in the water, at the way he was laughing at something Lily had said, head thrown back, completely unguarded, completely present, completely 7 years old, with no asterisk. Yeah, Ethan said. She's going to be at the beach. Maya's hand tightened slightly in his. He held it. In 11 days there would be a courtroom and a judge and a lawyer who was very expensive and very good, and a man who had spent 8 years deciding what Maya was allowed to be. In 11 days, Lucas would have to sit somewhere formal and say things no 7-year-old should have to say, and the machinery of the law would grind through all of it and produce an outcome that would define the shape of their lives going forward. But that was 11 days away. That was a different morning. This morning, the water was flat and clear. This morning, 2 children were in the surf without a single concern beyond the cold and the waves and whatever game they were improvising out of nothing. This morning, a woman who had spent 3 years making herself as small as possible was standing in the red bikini in the full morning light, occupying exactly the space she was owed, holding the hand of a man who had spent 3 years perfectly still inside his own grief, and was finally, irreversibly moving forward. This morning was this morning, and it was enough. And it was real, and it was theirs. Some things end the way storms end all at once, dramatic, the clear moment you can point to. And some things end the way winter ends, incrementally, invisibly, 1 degree at a time, until one morning you walk outside and realize, without being able to name exactly when it happened, that you are warm again. Ethan Cole and Maya Reyes stood at the water's edge while their children played in the surf, and neither of them looked back and neither of them needed to. They were already somewhere new.